This is JadeCast, your gateway to traditional martial arts and Chinese culture. Brought to you by your host, Shuffle Jonathan Bluestein. Hello and welcome back to the podcast, folks. Today's guest would be Itzik Cohen Sensei, who was very long ago my karate sensei and whose dojo I attended for a short period of a year and a half on my martial journey. Since then, Itzik Sensei and I had become colleagues and friends, and we've been keeping in touch over the years, speaking frequently. He is a part-time mentor to me. In addition to that, he's a man I deeply respect. He has over 40 years experience in the martial arts and has authored and published 2 books with a third one on the way. You know, at one point in our relationship, one day Itzik told me, you really don't have to call me sensei. Yeah, you studied with me, but you only studied with me for what was it, like a year and a half? Oh, well, that's a respectable amount of time, but overall, why do you keep calling me your sensei? Well, I told him, obviously, I still deeply respect you and you're my mentor, at least partly, and I still learn a lot from you. But moreover, in Chinese culture, it is said that a teacher for a day, a real teacher for a day, is a parent for a lifetime. And I think that's one of the biggest compliments you can give a teacher. And that is certainly a compliment I would give again and again to Itzik Sensei, a really terrific human being. And I am happy that now my listeners would also have a chance to learn from his wisdom. Here he is, in his own words. Itzik Sensei, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Jonathan. Thank you very much. I miss you very much,
Yes, well, Itzik and I are good friends, and we're living far apart nowadays, myself in Canada and he in Israel. And we're split due to the corona situation, but it's lovely to have him on the podcast with us. We've had just an incredible amount of amazing martial arts related conversations over the years, and I thought it would be a good idea to share some of his insight with our listeners. So Itzik Sensei, let me just begin by asking you, when exactly did you start with martial arts practice, and why did you start with the martial arts?
Well, actually, I started when I was, don't remember exactly, but at school, around 13, 14. And I played football and volleyball. I swam a little bit, and martial arts were very far from my scene. But I had a good friend. He was a boxer. And then he started to do karate at school. And since we were a good friend, he asked me to join him. Of course, I refused. I was quite busy with other sports. And also with my character, people that know me will witness that I'm not aggressive, but I can turn in 180 degrees in a second. So I didn't like to fight, things like that. And I thought that karate is not for me. One day I actually came with him to school to see martial arts, and I joined the group, and I liked the teacher, the sensei, very much.
Who was the sensei at the time?
Isaac Florentine Sensei.
Who is still practicing and teaching, by the way, in the United States.
Yes. And we're still in a very good and warm contact with him and his family. And he's amazing. He's got an amazing personality, and I actually started because of him. So this was the beginning.
You know, it's funny. People typically attribute their beginnings in the martial arts to this or that movie character. Bruce Lee is very common, but very few care to give credit to that one friend who dragged him into the dojo, right?
Yes, and I still in contact also with this friend, mostly with his mother. She's opera singer, and she's playing the piano, teacher and singer. And yeah, I remember my friends, yeah,
So
and
that's a good
cherish it.
habit to that's a good habit to have. Nowadays, people exchange friends and partners like they do socks, but you were born at a different time.
Yes, yes, and it sucks. I have to tell you,
Yeah,
this new, we don't have any ethics today, or the ethics today is so different than the ethics in the past. We even don't have time to think about ethics today. Because so many things happen all the time, and ethics is quite far from us, which brings us, or will bring us, to maybe the in the future of in this interview to maybe the differences between Okinawan karate and the modern karate, or Okinawan culture to other cultures that related to martial arts.
Before we get to that, let me ask you this because you raised the issue of ethics, morals, and values. Do you think it is the role of a traditional martial arts teacher to pass on such things to students? Because I know many teachers who are traditional in the technical sense, but if you'd ask them, they would say, well, who am I to teach ethics, morals, values to students? That's their parents' role. I'm here to teach them martial arts. I should limit myself to that. What do you answer to such a teacher?
Well, it's a matter of approach. In the past, when I was younger, I hope I'm still young enough, but when I was younger, then I was very strict about it. Today, I got maybe more the Okinawan approach. It depends. I think that it's a matter of approach to life, and how you see your life, how you see your role in life and the society role in life, and the relations between you and the society. I think that it's true that it's the role of the, first of all, it's a fundamental, it's a role of the parents to educate. Then it's there maybe the role of the school, but it's also a role of a teacher, because a teacher is a teacher. For me, a teacher is a sensei. That means this is someone who passed or who stepped in the same way before you, and he knows something. And if he teach me how to punch, I should know how to use it correctly, like in any other profession. So for me, every sensei is an educator. um, in the past, I said that definitely yes, sensei, karate sensei or martial arts sensei is a prime educator. Today, I don't think so. I think that I'm a teacher. When people tell me that or ask me, you are a karate teacher, so you educate my son, and say, yeah, but this is your son. You are the first, you are the prime sensei, not me. I'm karate sensei. So it's true that there is a lot of values within karate, but I suppose my role is to pass these values through the karate. This is why I'm a karate sensei. If I was I don't know, musician, if I suppose I'm a teacher who that teaches piano or violin, then maybe I could pass some values, ethical values, through my instrument, through the piano, through the violin. Since my instrument is karate, I pass these values through karate. So I will not say to a boy that comes to my dojo, oh, you're naughty, your hands are dirty and your legs are dirty and you are very mean with your friends. No, I will teach him through karate how to behave better, how to be more clean for himself and for his environment. So this is what I think today.
Well, if I may comment on the phenomenon we see today, we get a little bit sidetracked, but just a few sentences. I think what happened is first we had women's rights and women's liberation, which is very good and very important. But in parallel with that, what happened was that the women went out of the house, and the women were the children's primary teachers. They were the mothers, and uh, in addition to that, both women and men gradually start working longer and longer hours outside. Now, I mean, you can take the radical example of the Industrial Revolution in London and people working 16 hours a day. Okay, but that's just a very narrow example. Overall, across the world, people did not used to work 16 hours a day, right? Most people
Yeah.
would work 4 to 6 hours a day on average. They worked far less than they do today. Still, in many European countries, many people work 6 to 7 hours a day. Now, what happened was you took the parents out of the house. So who's going to educate the children? The parents don't have enough time. So you outsource the education to the government. So now the government or the state are going to educate the children. And now the government and the state are also tired of this. So they want to outsource the education to all sorts of private entities. And again, in parallel to this entire process, we have our martial arts teachers as mentors. And because there's such an education crisis that has been um, sadly developing in that direction for the past, I don't know, 150, 100 years, suddenly the people come to us, the martial arts teachers, basically begging us to fill that void, and we're in the martial arts to do and teach martial arts, and suddenly we find ourselves as surrogate father figures, partly because of the great number of divorce cases. We find ourselves as replacement teachers because the teachers are overworked and they have to teach 30, 40 kids at the same time. So that's a very strange development that happened in the world of martial arts, which maybe in Itzik Sensei's time when he just started, that wasn't around.
Well, please don't put me in that corner. I don't want to be dragged to the modern world, because I think that it's all wrong. When I came from very modern world, I'm actually I came from the high tech, and I worked as in software engineering, and in some point in my life, I've decided that I want to concentrate in what I like, what I love the most, and what I believe in most. This is martial arts. But I can say that, parents should know. And again, it's approach of life. Some people will agree, others will disagree. But a boy or a girl, a child is a child. It's not a dog or a cat. And I like dogs and I like cats, But, I saw, there was a kind of a trend a few years ago that I saw actually parents go outside walking with a child, and they had a leash like a dog, that he will not run to the road. Well, maybe you can say, that, the result is this. It's, the child is not going running to the road, in front of a car or something, So the result is great, But there are some other results to this approach.
Well,
And
maybe the child would get used to the idea of having a leash. Maybe later the government would want to put a leash on that child when
okay,
he's in
so you
battle.
now drag me to the other corner.
Yeah,
Let's
let's go
stay
back
in
to
the
martial arts.
yeah the round arena. Let's stay in the round arena with no corners, But anyway, this is very clear. To be a parent is a responsibility. To be a teacher is a responsibility. Even to be a child is a responsibility. Everyone in the family, everyone in the society got his responsibility. And I think, I had students. I don't know. I think it was 15 years ago, and I wanted to give him a black belt, but he didn't do anything. I live in Israel, and as you know, everyone should go to the army. He didn't go to the army. When he started to study with me, it was too late to go to the army. And before he got his shodan, I asked him. And when the sensei asks you, it's kind of a demand. Well, I will not say order, but I asked him to. He was a teacher. He played also on guitar, very nice, and he taught guitar. And I asked him to go maybe to the hospital to cheer up some children, sick children, and to do something to return something back to the society. So eventually he got his shodan and he didn't do it, and he's not my student today. Maybe this is it's not a direct result of it, but I think that it's part of the game. Everyone should have responsibility for himself, for his environment, whether it's his parents, his children, if he's a teacher, for his students, and if he's learning at school. So as a parent, I should take care of this kid. If he doesn't feel well, I should take him to a doctor. I should give him some general knowledge, or give him some how can I say, some values, that he could use, positive values to use in future. It's my obligation. His obligation is to go to school and study. He doesn't go to work. I go to work. So everyone got its own obligation, whether he's to himself, to his teacher, to the dojo, to the society. If I live in a house with many apartments, so I'm part of a group, and this is very important. Today, a lot of people forget that they are part in a group. So it's like a machine. One of the examples that I give to my students, the small boys, the little boys, is that would you like to fly with an airplane that that this screw is not really good, and the other screw is not exactly in its place, and maybe the pilot, he got very good marks when he was making his courses, how to fly an airplane, but he forget a little bit, So of course not, but this is part of I would not say machine, but on one hand, the individual is very important, because if you have bad individuals, it means that the whole machine will screw up. Nobody would like to go on an airplane or submarine that something is wrong inside. So each individual should be, I would not say perfect, but should be good enough,
In
valuable.
also in the dojo.
Yes, also in the dojo, also in the family. Now, but the individuals cannot work only for themselves. In order to make the machine usable and safe, it should work together. They should integrate together. And today, people do not integrate. They don't care about integration. And by the way, just going back to the previous subject about about if you're talking about martial arts, of course. So even when you go to the army, it starts with when you start as a soldier. So there is discipline. Discipline is very important. But as more you are into the how you say manganon mechanism, when you go into the mechanism, so less is the discipline, more is the self-discipline. And if you go to special units, then you don't need a lot of discipline that will that somebody will put above your head. It's a self-discipline. You know that if you should do something, you will do it, and you will do your best to do it. And this is what I try to give to my students. Self-discipline, not discipline. Discipline, I don't want to be a soldier. I don't want to be a dummy. I want to do things correctly because it's good for me, because it's good for my environment. And by the way, this is one of the most important values in the Okinawan society, to not only to be someone by yourself, but also to illuminate it on the society and contribute yourself to the society. This is very important, and this is, I would say, even historical values in the Okinawan society. Well, if you ask me why the people in Okinawa live so long, this is one of the main reasons. Maybe not the only one, but definitely one of the main reasons. They're not alone. They're never alone. They always got friends. They have happiness in their lives. They have friends. They meet a lot. Nobody stays at home by himself. Every week they have a party or something. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So just a short cultural exposition for the listeners, because I think that Itzik Sensei was saying something that might sound a bit radical earlier to people from different countries and cultures. When he made a demand out of a student of his who did receive his Shodan grade, he did receive his black belt, but he asked of that student if he would make a contribution for society, show that he is a part of society. And one has to understand that Israeli society has very egalitarian roots. It is very important for Israelis to be supportive of one another because they live in a nation that is historically surrounded by enemies, and the implication of not working as a cooperative society means that they could all perish. In several instances, Israel was threatened not by the notion of simply losing a war, but its enemies literally saying that they would annihilate every single person in the country, men, women, children, the elderly, the sick, every single one. And so we have mandatory service in Israel. We have a mandatory service of nearly it used to be 3 years for men, 2 years for women. It's slightly less nowadays. But not everyone go through the army service. Some people do social service. They volunteer at hospitals. They support Holocaust survivors. They go and they assist the physically disabled. They work with children with mental handicaps. So it's quite common, actually, it is still the norm for young Israelis to go and be a part of their society. And therefore, for Itzik Sensei, it was important that if someone in his dojo is to become a black belt, that person would show to himself and to other people that he or she are willing to indeed be a part of the society and not simply, I wouldn't say selfish, but standalone individuals. Because I actually know who that person is that Itzik Sensei was talking about, that former student, and he's a good-hearted human being. All right, let's move on with martial arts. So I'd like to ask you, you're an Israeli who grew up around the ethos of the warrior, and you have served as Special Forces infantry. Now, how did that shape your practice and teaching of Okinawan karate?
Well, so one maybe small but fundamental correction. I was in the infantry. When I was in the kind of special forces, it was after the infantry. It was more like in the arena of terrorism, terrorism intelligence. So this was more kind of a special unit. Uh, but yes, I was participate in war, and I can say that it's one of the most ugliest things that can happen to any human being. Suddenly you understand that you are actually an animal, and you ask yourself, how come, that the human being fight, in wars, because it's something that for me it was kind of unnatural, and I asked myself these questions actually twice in my life, uh, once when I was in a war and I saw horrible things in a war, and the second time, when I had my first baby, how come that parents can send, their babies to war, but actually, I say on one hand it's very unhuman, on the other hand it's so human, because people will always fight or between them, always fought between them. And yes, of course, that there is that part of influence, I would say, but I can definitely say that the main influence have not come from the army. It came from my teachers, my senses, and maybe this is a good point, to mention them. They will excuse me if I would make it briefly, but I think that we said Isaac Florentine, and then there was Yossi Sheknovich, and Reap, and Thomas Weber Sensei, which I have a very good and warm contact with him also. We speak, every month. And Hiroshi Akamine Sensei, my Kobudo teacher, and Kunyoshi Sensei at the beginning, and Paul Vermiller Sensei, which is a very nice guy. And I owe him a lot. He was in Israel and spent a lot of time to teach us and teach me Kobudo here in Israel. And then I had Shlomo David Sensei from Aikido, and Abi Moria, Sifu Abi Moria, Chinese martial arts, and Tomer Akoka Sensei with Koryo Iaijutsu. So these people, I think, influenced me the most, not the army. What I got from the army.
Let me reiterate the question, because I was striving for something we have discussed many a time before. You are commonly speaking of the virtue, or perhaps the contribution, that an army service as an infantryman could have for someone as a martial artist. That there is a difference in the manner one understands the martial arts if one had been, as opposed to not have had been, a warrior and to have seen combat, right?
Well, I tell you, I think that the two people that really influenced me, and a very good friend of mine until today, one is Efi Sensei, karate teacher, he was on a tank in the army, and the other one is Israel Levi Sensei. He was in a special unit, and it's enough, he was in a special unit in the army, and when we talk and when we do karate, we didn't bring our past from the army to the karate, even when we are doing combat. I think that, of course, that combat does something to you, when you talk about experience. But let's not forget, this is, I think, one of the main subject that I stress in my second book, and definitely in my third book, from a point of view of the techniques. That when we talk about, I principally I say combat and not fighting, because we say, we're talking about martial arts fighting, but what is fighting? What is combat? Everyone today talks about self-defense, but self-defense is very wide expression, like self-defense for whom? Self-defense for a young woman that somebody tries to mistreated on the street, self-defense for two young boys that going with the knives, and it depends in which culture, like if you go to the Europe, Western Europe, and if you go to the Oriental cultures, you would find that they use in same scenarios, they use different tools, different knives, and they use different techniques, to slash or to come from above with a knife, or to stab from to the stomach, So self-defense against who, So if you go to history, we are going to actually to really martial arts, like we call it combat, So in katas, for example, when you see, especially in earlier katas, when you see a technique and somebody I explain a technique or a joint technique or something, or against some knives, or so people say, it's useless. Of course it's useless. It's useless because you see it in your own eyes, in your own environment, from your own culture, and you think it's self-defense. But if you would think that maybe in another culture, people can stab you like that, that suddenly it makes sense. If you would think, in earlier katas, that it derived from earlier combat, when actually security professionals, very skilled security professional people used it, not as a self-defense, but to protect somebody professionally, maybe suddenly it would be logical. So, we taking the combat environment of today, with the guns and the machine guns and all these modern high-tech, tools, weapons, and we derive it to the civilian arena. It's not like that. The combat arena is a combat arena in the army. Then you got the professional arena. Professional arena could be maybe in the army, maybe in the police, maybe when you protect some diplomats, maybe when you are going to in the civilian arena, when you need it only for for a discotheque. It completely different principles of combat. The threat is different, the attacker is different, the weapons are different, everything is different, but people today do not think about it. They think only about their own circle, There are so many circles, Now, even if I teach, for instance, self-defense, youth, it depends if it's a boy or it's a girl. Why? Because the threats are different. The way of approaching them, when the attacker approach them, is different. The environment is different. The means are different. Their abilities are different. Everything is different. So I cannot treat it the same. This is why I'm saying that, on one hand, we are all one big family in martial arts, and we do the same. But on the other hand, it should be very specific, and this is one of the things that I think it common to every single profession, whether it's computers, sciences, or martial arts, is that there is some common principles, common frame, general frame, but inside this general frame, everything is very specific. If you want to be skillful, you must be specific. You cannot be just a doctor of medicine. Doctor of medicine for what? For teeth, for eyes, for surgery. If you're going to laws, as you know, there are many sub professions in laws, So it's also in martial arts the same.
May I
And
insert a comment here? There is this lie going around since the 1990s of some people, and most of us know who these people are, saying that all fights end on the ground. And then it turned out to not be true, of course. So now they would say, oh, it's 90% of fights ending on the ground, 70% of fights ending on the ground. Well, I don't know how many fights end on the ground. I think it's culture dependent, it's place dependent, it's profession dependent. But let me tell you this. When I was a policeman, I never saw any fight going to the ground. The only people who were going to the ground were the people being arrested, being wrestled into the ground by the policemen themselves. But the policemen were not trying to put joint locks on them. They're just trying to put them in handcuffs, which is totally different. So, and also, I mean, the policemen were nearly always numerically superior. And even if they were not numerically superior, they had firearms. And even if they couldn't reach their firearm, they had pepper spray and they had their handcuffs and they could call for help. So this was quite different to the idea of ground grappling. Moreover, that in the United States, a lot of people study and practice wrestling. Even before Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu came onto the scene, wrestling is a very popular American sport, and many forms of it are. And it's taught in high schools, and even in elementary schools, certainly in colleges. So in a country where a lot of people are exposed to wrestling, it would make sense that people would try to wrestle you to the ground. In Israel, just as a point of comparison, I hardly know anyone who had ever studied wrestling. Wrestling is not a thing in Israel. It's not taught in any school or university. So again, different environment, different solutions. Let's move on with the questions here. So you made an interesting transition. For many decades, you were a practitioner and teacher of Shito-Ryu Karate, and you transitioned into practicing and teaching primarily Shorin-Ryu Karate alongside your Kobudo practice. And now there are personal reasons for this, of course, but I would like to ask about the technical reasons, because when you were looking for something else, there were many teachers and styles you could have gone for, but you specifically chose Shorin-Ryu and your current teacher. Why did you do that?
Well, because as you say, some is a more kind of personal reasons that came from, I don't know if to say spiritual, but definitely mental. And the other one is that, each style and each school and even each sensei got its own specifications, things that it brings with him. And for me, there was something missing, which I found in Shorin-Ryu Okinawan Karate, Orthodox Karate, and specifically with this sensei, Higa Sensei, which is also in a lot of ways there are many common things between him to my previous sensei, Thomas Weber Sensei. For instance, both of them are, the primary technique is the Gyakotsuki, which is I think the most basic technique in karate, and they are both very aware when they were young, tough fighters. Of course, that the personality they are completely different, almost in the two edges, But I think that in my age, I'm 57. I was 57. I turned to 57 3 months ago, and I think after 40 years in my age, I've done enough when it comes to combat, on fighting, and things like that. I wanted to dive into the how would I say the elementary principles of karate, to the elementary ingredients in Kion, because everything eventually, if you will analyze it, you find out that there are small details that build that thing, the big thing. And for me, I had all the big things, but I didn't have the small ingredients inside, that small principles, how to do it exactly. And as you know, like in Chinese martial arts, there are few ways to, of let's say, how you call it, a power manufacture.
Power generation.
Yes. So Shitoryu karate do it in they do it in a certain way. Okinawan karate is very different. For the stranger eyes, it's very difficult to observe it. But for people who does Okinawan karate, they immediately observe the Okinawan biomechanics, which is very unique to Okinawa. And for me, I was attracted to it. And this is why I chose Okinawan karate and this specific teacher, Sensei.
Do you think it might be possible for you to try and explain to listeners some of the differences in how power is generated in Shitoryu Karate versus Shoryu Karate?
Well, it's Israel in another corner. Well, I would say that when I was introduced to Okinawan martial art, it was actually the Ryukyu Kobudo via a Shimbukan organization with the Akabene
I just
Hiroshi.
want to, I'm sorry to cut you off. My apologies. I just would, I owe it to listeners to explain, because Itzik Sensei keeps saying Okinawan martial arts, and some might wonder, but he's been practicing Shitoryu Karate. It's karate, isn't it Okinawan? But as a matter of fact, there are some distinctions, cultural and technical, and Shitoryu Karate is characterized by many as a more so-called Japanese style of karate. And what Itzik Sensei was implying is that he began to receive that sort of more traditional Okinawan flavor when he started with his Kobudo practice, which was when he was still engaged with Shitoryu. Okay, please go on.
Yes, because Kobudo and the Shorin-ryu karate are actually one. It was one in the past. Today, people do karate and Kobudo, Ryukyu Kobudo, Okinawan Kobudo, in different groups, but it came from the same roots, by the same people at the same era. So yes, Shitoryu actually is also kind of, you won't find so many Shitoryu dojos in Okinawa. Most of them are in Japan, and indeed Kenowa Mabuni by himself was Okinawan, but the Shitoryu was mainly developed, in mainland Japan, such as Shotokan. Shorin-ryu karate is much more Okinawan, many hips, and a lot of tanden power. And like in Japan, also the Okinawan, they don't explain a lot. You just have to be there and experience. And it comes out of experience. When you are in the dojo, if you come, for me, it's year after year, because I wish I could be there day after day, but year after year, every year I go for 1 month to Okinawa, and I train every day in a Kobudo dojo, in a karate dojo. And after a few years, the sensei accepts you more. And if he notices that you come and train by yourself and try to dive into the details, then he brings you more, he offers you more knowledge just by teaching you. And if you just come, to be with everyone and to say that you are in Okinawa and you go to this teacher and that, and you jump from this place to that place, so they will give you a very good feeling, that you know a lot, and they will teach you another kata. But the real stuff, the real knowledge stays within the core of the dojo. Only that people that are kind of the family in the dojo, that they really come year after year, and what we call, the Okinawan people, the first thing when you enter the dojo, they look for your pure heart. I remember, when I was young and I've heard these stories, here and there, I said, okay, this bullshit, we like to tell stories, like I didn't eat and didn't drink for 1 week until the teacher offered me to go in. It's not that idea. You come, you go to the dojo, they accept you, they smile to you, they kind of teach you, and they really teach you, but this is the outside, and it's not because it's, we will call it, it's not secret, but if you are not training every year, if you're not training every day, and if you not come to the dojo every year, if you are not in the dojo with the sensei, so the sensei cannot teach you, the internal things. And Okinawan Karate is, well, one of my veteran students, more than 20 years student, he told me one day, you are doing internal karate, not external karate. Well, there are internal martial arts and external martial arts. And, karate kind of, so to speak, external. No, it's not. It's definitely internal. Not less than Tai Chi. Not less than anything else. Of course, it's different. The approach is different. The way that you move is different. But I can tell today, the way of producing the power is the same. Everything eventually is the same. It's like, climbing on a mountain from few angles, and you see your experience is completely different. But when eventually you get to the top of that mountain, it's the same top. There is only one top. So this is what I think about Okinawan karate in general. Yeah, you got hip, you got tanden. History, I don't believe that there is better and worse, in martial arts. I believe that everyone chooses his own way, because as I said before, we are all individuals. And for me, the Okinawan karate today makes it, it makes me feel good, it completes my personality, it completes my approach to martial arts. And maybe for someone else, it would be the opposite, It would go from Shorin Ryu to Shito-Ryu. It's okay, But this is what I feel. This is why I also chose an orthodox dojo, Kyudokan Karate, Yuchoko Higa Sensei and Higa Minoru Sensei. It's very orthodox dojo. And
Could you
by the way,
kindly spell the names of your teacher and of the dojo in English letters, so to benefit our listeners?
Higa, it's a very common name in Okinawa, family name, and it's Higa. Minoru, like it sounds, N-O-R-U. So Higaminoru Sensei is a very well-known persona in Okinawa, very respected, well-respected in Okinawa. By the way, also Akamine Yoroshi. When we talk about Kobudo, a very well-known and famous persona, respectable in Okinawa.
And
And
again, Akamine Hiroshi Sensei, just like it sounds, it's Akamine space Hiroshi.
definitely, yes, correct.
All right.
So, and both use a lot of hip, both use tanden, both use about same principles. They what makes the difference is the personality again. And I think that Okinawan karate, if I would try to explain it or describe it in one or two words, it's about producing power. In order to produce power, to maximize your power, you need few things. You need something physical, and you need something mental. It goes together. If you don't know how to concentrate, how you observe yourself internally, it would be very difficult to produce real power.
Okay.
You will be
I would like to pause you here because you're talking about very important things, but we need to break them down so the listeners could really understand what you're talking about. So you mentioned three things that I would like to ask you to break down for us: hips, tendon, and this focus you're talking about into the insides of the body. So hips, tendon, and the focus on the inside of the body. And I would just like the listeners to know and understand that tendon is the Japanese or Okinawan equivalent of dantian in Chinese martial arts.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So when you talk about when you talk about hips, you well, in Japanese, let's say they call it koshi, waist or hips. But I found myself, I don't take it as only for myself. When I notice the Western cultures, when they talk about using the hips, to spin the hips, they talking about the, how you call it, ekef.
The circumference.
The circumference, yes. And this is the way they try to use it. When you go to Okinawans or Japanese, I think, I don't know about Chinese, maybe it's the same. They take it as the center of the body. Okay,
so the axis of the body rather than the circle that surrounds the axis.
Yes, and this is a great, big difference, so this is about the hips, you also, I found that a lot of people or teachers, they use the hips automatically, and I say no. In some situations, some scenarios, you will use the hip in one way. In other scenarios, you use it in another way, or it may be at the same scenario, you will use it differently according to your intention. It depends what you want to do, So it's not just automatically. Also, when you start, you use a very big movements. But in reality, or when you are very advanced, you hardly see it outside, because that motion is, again, it's more internal than external. I use it a lot outside because I teach and I want my students to observe me and to follow me. But when I practice by myself, I don't use a lot of hip outside. You don't see it a lot, but it's more internally. That is the hip. the second thing is the tanden, which is, my students also ask me a lot about it, what we can spend 2 months talking only about tanden, and we will never, not only that we will not complete to talk about it, we will find ourselves at the same point all the time. Tanden is something which is very physical and very mental and also spiritual, and it's all together. All I can say that is something that connected to your internal center of the body, and well, you cannot train specific on tanden. You train on various things, and through these things, during the years, you start to feel it. Mm-hmm. And I know also that when you start to feel it, you say, okay, I got it. And then after a few months or few years, you say, oh, wait, it's not that. Now I understand it. And after another year or 2 years or 3 years, again, so this is something that it's also spiritual, but tanden power is something that I can say that, like in Shorin-ryu karate, classic Shorin-ryu karate, if I will mention only 2 things. One is there is a stance that is very similar to T stance, like you see in Aikido or in Iajutsu.
So could we break down that stance? So in which directions are the feet pointing?
Well, the lefty, it's like a T.
Like a T shape.
Like T shape, and
but there are 2 types of T shape. So I would gather. Do you mean that the rear leg is 90 degrees and the forward leg is the rear leg. Okay,
the front leg.
You have to break it down for us. I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
Okay, the front leg points to the shaman, points to the face.
Okay, front leg points to the front, and rear leg.
Yes, the toes and the rear leg are going to the vertically.
Okay, so the rear leg 180 degrees or 0 degrees sideways.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is, and it's simply they call it, okidachi, which means a floating stance. Mm-hmm. Like, in manners of real combat, I would not use it. And this is very a principle, very, very basic stance that you use in many katas in Okinawan karate. What I find, I myself, nobody told me about it.
Just a second, because the description could also sound like mabo in Chinese, or almost like shikodachi in Okinawan karate. So you have the front foot facing forward, the rear foot facing sideways at 180 or 0 degrees, depending. And what's the weight distribution?
Okay, so let's say the weight distribution is 50-50.
Okay.
Or almost 50-50. And the not to combine it with kokutsudachi. Kokutsudachi is very long stance. I'm talking about a stance that it's like nekoashidachi.
Okay, so
like
it's
the cat stance, very short. It's a bit longer, just a bit longer, because in nekoashidachi, most of your weight or all of your weight are going back to the back leg, to the rear leg. Here it's 50-50, and the leg is a little bit longer, the stance is a little bit longer, but not kokutsudachi. Like, let's say 40 centimeters or something, it depends,
Oh, so, and if it's not 50-50, there would be more weight on the rear leg?
In okudachi, the floating stance, it's 50-50 or almost 50-50, and really difficult to perform it correctly at the beginning. But what I find that the way of using this stance with the hands, the most basic technique, with the most basic or one of the most basic stances, are actually train you without about it, to start to use your tandem, because your body is kind of locked, and you try to use your hip like your sensei, but you cannot do it. So you start to try to use some other parts of your body, and eventually, after many years, you understand that, because at the beginning you ask yourself, why do I have this stance? It's not good for fighting. Yes, but if you know how to use this stance correctly, you will be very good in fighting.
Okay, so if
Well,
I
so
understand the trick, the kinesiological trick being played here correctly, basically they're putting you in this almost uncomfortable position that does not allow for a lot of what you'd call wiggle room. You cannot
yeah,
go too much backward and forward or left or right. But by limiting the foot, the leg, and the knee movements, you have to start emanating your movements and your power from the tandem.
exactly. And now I make the scene, because my sensei, Higa Minoru sensei, never told me that. He never taught me that. He never mentioned that. I found it myself, but I teach it to my students, so they don't experience it. They try to do what I say, not what they feel. And now I make another scene when we are talking about it. So people will listen to us, and then they will say, oh, okay, so I got it. I will try to do it, and I got it. This is the importance of the sensei, because when you do something, it's not enough to do it. Like I say today, everything today is on the internet, on YouTube and everything. You need a sensei, a good sensei that will lead you to the right path correctly. You cannot do it by yourself, even if you see it, because it's not what you see, it's what you feel. And your sensei will correct you according to your abilities, your own understanding, your own experience. So this is being a student, and this is being a sensei, to work together in order to achieve something. So we talked about, by the way, Naifanchi kata or Naihanchi kata, it's same kata. Naifanchi is the more Chinese-oriented name. Naihanchi is more the Japanese name. What in Shotokan they call it Teki kata. And they do it completely different than the Okinawan karate. If you look Teki kata and Naihanchi kata or Naifanchi kata, it's completely different. Same movement maybe, but completely way of doing it. And it's the same, it teaches you how to stance correctly, how to combine the parts of the internal mechanism correctly, and how to manufacture, how to produce power. I would not say the right way, but I would say in a very certain way. So, and it works on the tandem, it works on the making the body together, to put all the parts of the body together into one structure, and to work from the internal part of the body as a structure, as a solid structure. So this is about the tandem. So we talked about koshi, we talked about tandem, and there was one thing more.
Yeah, but I can't
Well,
remember now myself. Just a sec. All right, I remember now. We were talking about those internal nuances in one's practice. And I know how these are found in various Chinese martial arts, but I'd like to ask you, are there methods in Okinawan karate, beside going into, other things like meditation, in order for one to find those little movements principles and mechanics in one's body?
Well, in short answer, it's no, But if I will try to really find something, because to say no, it's really easy. Well, I would say that yes, benevolence. Put your ego outside. Try to be better for yourself and maybe for the society. Because when you humble and you are open to accept things, then you can try to go through some kind of introspection process. Well, you can call it meditation or not meditation. I don't want to go into um, definitions. But if you go to Okinawa and you will look at the dojo in Okinawa, you would see that when the sensei, teach somebody, even if he's a white belt, just came to the dojo, how to punch, and he leaves him. This guy or girl can spend 1.5 hours doing in one place, one technique, and they will concentrate in what they're doing. And the Westerns are eager to learn more and more and more. Sensei, I finished. I made 10 tsuki. Please teach me something else. No, just you need to be patient, and you need to trust your sensei and to give him respect, and to understand that when you come, you don't buy knowledge. You come to experience something, and in order to experience it, you have to open your senses. If you want to smell, you have to smell with your nose. If you want to taste, you taste with your mouth, with your tongue. Okay. If you want to see, you see with your eyes. To listen with your ears. And by the way, there is a great difference between listening and hearing. So it's not enough to hear the sensei. You should listen the sensei and try to understand what he says. And sometimes you think that you understand it, but you not really comprehend it, because you need time. It's like a wine. Sometimes I like wines very much, by the way. And you need to open the bottle. It depends where from that wine came from, which brew, what types of grapes. When you open the bottle, you need to let some time to the wine will breathe some air before you put it to the glass. Then you look at the wine, you see what there is inside the wine. Then you smell it. It's the whole process. And today people are running. They don't have time. This is all external. Externally, you can get into a certain level. You cannot go above this level. Okay, if you want to go above this level, you have to give up on something. Give up on your pride. This is something that really difficult to many people. I remember there was I would say it in 2 words. One of the times a few years ago, I went with a big group of my students to Okinawa, and I told them, when you go to Okinawa, don't forget, you come to learn. You don't come to show how good you are. So learn, look, and listen and learn. Try to accept things and don't analyze it. I know it's difficult. Part of them are more than 20 years students, 25 years already. I told them, don't try to analyze anything. Just accept everything. When you come back, then you will analyze it. You think that they could do it? The first training, they started to compare between what they do and what the other people do in the dojo, and they try to compare. They already closed themselves to new things. You cannot learn any classic not only karate, any classic art, whether it's karate or martial art or ballet, classic ballet, or opera singers or music, classic music. If you are not open to smell and to hear and to live what you do and to experience it, you will never get there. You will get the gold medal, which is very, very nice. You know, if you go to Olympic Games, they're very high level. But when they are 25, 30, 35, 40, they finished, you know, because the mental and I would say the mental phase start when the physical or the technical phase finish, and the spiritual phase starts when the mental well, not finish, but let's say when you are when
you're mature, when your
mature
art has
enough.
matured.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when
Like
you are
wine.
maturing, you like wine, exactly. When you got certain matureness, you know, when mature enough, then the mental phase starts to the process of the mental phase starts, and then the spiritual phase. So you always carry the physical and the technical phase, because you cannot really fight without physical condition, good physical condition. If you want to be a warrior, whether you like it or not, you have to physically, you have to build to be good enough, you know, physically. You have to be good enough technically, but you have to be also with a certain level of mental and spiritual level. So
All right. So as we're running out of time, I would like to ask a question which I think would be of use to our listeners, and it's probably quite a profound question about Okinawan karate. Typically, each karate kata has its own traditional rhythm and pace, which is not necessarily true for other martial arts, but it's very distinct of karate. Do you consider it a good idea that the practice of kata should also be experimented with different rhythm and speeds, perhaps attempting a kata at an extremely slow or an extremely fast pace, or maybe holding kata postures in place for a long time? What do you think about such ideas?
well, yeah, actually, yes, I do it myself, you know, and I do it with my students, you know. We do some katas in a very speedy, very floating. Uh, Sometimes we do it very slowly, and we change it. Sometimes we do it in to different angles or with more steps or less steps. But I always start and complete the lesson with the traditional um, tempo. I think that as I said before, you know, in the Ishtoriu karate, and especially Sanshin Kan, Thomas Weber Sensei, my previous sensei, he is my sensei. All my senses, by the way, from the past are still my sensei. But you know, I mean, then he is very powerful, and tempo very high. Okinawan karate prefer traditionally lower tempo, although before and after the lesson they do it also very fast. But in the normal frame, in the regular frame, the tempo is much slower, and they pinpoint and pick in every single thing, in every technique. They go into the nuances, every finger, every breathe, every lumbar, you know. They go into details, and I think this is very important. But again, then you should know how to observe yourself and understand it. And I found that that if you do things only very fast, then you miss. You miss because you will never be powerful. You can be powerful, okay, but we try to maximize it. So we have to go into details. On the other hand, if you only go into details and you don't know how to integrate it in different tempos, then you cannot fight with it. Since I come also from practical karate and I use practical approach, I understand that for fighting or for combat, you need both. You need to be powerful enough and you need to be fast enough and float enough. The movement should be float, because you can be also very fast, but there is no good integration between or among the techniques. Then you are not floating. And in order to float, you need also to breathe correctly. So there are so many ingredients, into this phase of tempo in the kata that both are very important. And by the way, if you're talking about it, it's, each kata got also what we call bunkai. And many people are wrong, they mix between bunkai and oyo. Bunkai, it's if we translate it to maybe to English, it's a implication, not implication, application. But bunkai, it's not. For Japanese, it's not application. Bunkai, it's disassemble or dismantle or deeply analyze things, or aggregating things. So bunkai is actually take some technique in a kata and try to analyze it in different approaches, and it doesn't have to be practically, not necessarily practically for fighting, but more to understand a concept and to continue to create it, to understand it, to comprehend it, to do various things with it, and to develop yourself, Oyo, this is the practical application.
So how do you spell that word, oyo?
Well, O-Y-O.
Oyo.
Oyo. This is the practical application.
So if I were to use English words, maybe we can distinguish a breakdown and the usage.
Something like that, yes. Now, bunkai, of course, also could be very useful, but not necessarily. So, but what is very important is that in a kata, the kata is something that when you train, you can change it, but you should always keep the same line of the kata, the same, to work exactly the same traditional kata all the time, because the kata is the I would say
The spine.
The spine. It's the spine of karate. Karate is kion, kata, and then the rest of it. And this is like the matzpen?
A compass.
A compass, more you are, when you navigate, more you are skillful, more you can diverge yourself from the main road. But the kata is the main road, it will lead you to the right way. And if you will always change the kata, because I feel that this should be like that, and the other way, then after 50 years or 100 years, we will lose our way. We will go to a completely different direction. Now, not everyone is capable to change the kata or work differently on the kata. But if somebody is skillful enough, yes, definitely work on the kata in different way, but don't forget to start in the traditional way and to complete the training in the traditional way, because this is the linkage from the past to the future. And don't step on the past. when our previous senses along the generations gave us a lot of information, a lot of knowledge. If we step on it, we finished. We forget it. That we delete it. We want to add on it, not to delete it. So don't delete the kata. Don't change the kata. Add on it. So this is what I believe. I think, tradition is very important in order to accumulate knowledge.
All right. So before we finish, could you please briefly tell us about the books you've already published and your present and your future book project?
Okay. My first book was Karate Uchinadi, which was actually it comes in one book, but it's two parts. The first part is about the historical environment, culture, about the general environment the karate was evolved derived from. And I think that in order to understand what we are doing today practically, I'm talking about practically, if you want to use correctly karate, not just to make a kick and to be strong, but to make the most out of the kick and the punch and the movement, and to use it in a very combative way, you should understand where did it come from, and how it was evolved during the eras. So the first part of the book is about Okinawa environment, geopolitics, and things like that. The second part is more about historical and technical evolution of karate. And I consider it, not only me, some very well-known and very respectable, famous researchers claim that this is a very important book that should be on every shelf of someone who interested in karate.
Yeah, it is a good book and a very important work, specifically on the history of the culture that surrounds karate. I would say both your first and second book are very historically and culturally driven, more so than having technical discussions like you'd have in the martial arts class. And you talk more about the second book now, and then there's also a distinction from the third book, and you tell us more about it.
Yeah. Okay. So just to go for 1 sec to the first book, in the second part of the first book, I also consider I talk about some technical importance, and I'm talking about the differences in katas like Sanchin kata between maybe Oichi Ryu and Gojo Ryu, and I bring some technical information, but people should know where it derived from. It's important. The second book, yes, truly, it's also about history, but the second book, it's much more technical oriented, because actually I'm bringing the historical phase of the techniques. I'm talking about techniques in the second book, not how. Yes, not how to provide these techniques practically, how to use them. I believe that in order to do so, you need to come to the dojo. You cannot do it from a book or from the video, but I definitely explain some issues about practical the practical phase of the technique, and how it evolved from the historical environment to the nowadays environment. The second book that I write, well, I actually didn't mention the names of the second book. So, Pathway of Karate Development, this is the name of my second book. And it is indeed the pathway of karate technique development. The third book, what I've got a name, but I would keep it with myself because maybe I will change it. So although I'm quite it's something that it actually because because of my first book, I got a lot of people, a lot of references. People asked me to maybe to be to widen the era of the technical phase. So the pathway of karate development is more about the technical phase of the development, the development of the technical phase. The third book, again, because people ask me to even widen more. So in the third book, I actually I try to take that codex of karate and to make it more comprehensive only from technical point of view. So people that will read the second book, they will actually, of course, they will have the references to the historical part, but then they will know better, they could understand better the techniques of karate, the meaning of the techniques, the meaning of the kion, the meaning of the kata, and the meaning of what we called before, what we mentioned before as bunkai and oyo. How it works, because, for example, sometimes you see in a kata, there is a kata that starts with offense and not with defense. So people ask, yes, but the first technique should be offensive, not defensive. It should be defensive and not offensive. Or there is one kata.
I just, again, a background for listeners, because a very famous idiom in karate, I think it was coined by Jichin Funakoshi Sensei, is karate ni no sente nashi. There is no first attack in karate. So many people think of karate as a defense-oriented art, and this is the point of contention that Itzik Sensei was referring to. Like, why is this kata beginning with an offensive technique? It should start with a defensive technique. What's going on?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. There is a kata that starts when you go on your knees, you bend on your knees, and you make some kind of agauke or uchiuke. That means that, if you think about it, it's a suicide, becoming suicide, the first technique that you go down and you try to block a kick while you're going with your face to the kick. But actually, who said that it's a block? It's not a block. Maybe I take somebody to the ground and seize him. Now, today we don't do it because the concept today is self-defense. And which type of self-defense? Street fighting. Great. Somebody comes to you with a knife or without a knife. He wants to punch you to the face. Then you block him and you give him a smash. Okay? But if you go to to that era of Ryukyu kingdom, when they use it, not for self-defense in the civilian arena, but they use it to security as a security mean. So think that you are a security guy, then you should guard someone, okay? And suddenly someone try to stab him or to do something, and all you need to do is to approach this attacker or aggressor and seize him to the floor. And maybe it's very important to seize him to the floor because maybe there are some intruders and you need also to get some information, not only to kill him or to punch him. So many techniques are completely different than what we approach to it today.
Hmm.
And people sometimes do not understand it. So there are so many examples. Like there is one example, of if we will go to Kushanku kata or a Pasai kata or a Useishi kata, Pasai kata, Pasai dai, Pasai sho. These are two very famous katas in every style almost in Shorin karate. And you have a technique that you bend a little bit forward and you give double punch. And then you ask yourself, well, when can I use it in real fighting? It's bullshit. It's nonsense. Well, maybe it's not a double punch. Maybe you push somebody. Maybe you push somebody to your colleague. Because if you're a security man, you don't work alone all the time. Maybe it's not a push. Maybe there are so many things that you can play with it, but you have to comprehend. This is what I mean when you see karate, when you see kata. Don't think about it from your own angle. Try to think in different angles, in different environments, and then you will find that it's not only that it's very logical, but also that it's very useful, because if you are skilled enough, then you can take a principle and bring it to your own arena and use it. But you need to be skillful enough to comprehend it.
In
So
Chinese martial arts, we have the phenomenon of a lot of people pushing their students around. Now, it's involved with this charlatanism, what we call the hop. If these teachers who are playing magic tricks, making their students hop around the room as if they've been hit by, a magical energy bolt. But practically speaking, there are techniques in Chinese martial arts for just pushing someone, and people underestimate them. They think it's silly. Well, pushing someone into a deep ravine or pushing someone onto a moving truck is possibly the deadliest technique imaginable.
exactly.
Yeah, it's very easy to apply, and you're gonna kill someone with one move. Where and when do you get that? So it's even more efficient than most weapons. So again, like Itzik Sensei is saying, you have to think outside of your own context and realize that real life can give shape and meaning to movements that you may have not anticipated. And with this being said, we have to finish for today because Itzik Sensei has got a young child to take care of, and that's the most important in life.
As we start the conversation, about education, so maybe this is complete the circle of today.
Mm-hmm. And I would just like to ask you before we leave, if people would like to reach out to you, what are the best venues? Should they email you, look you up on Facebook? What should they do?
They can go into Facebook. I sometimes I miss things in the Facebook because I'm, as I say, I prefer to be practical, and I really like what I do. I love what I do. So most of the time I train. I'm not in the Facebook, and sometimes I miss things. But I'm sure that if you leave me a message, private message in the Facebook, I hope, I cannot promise, but I hope not to miss it. And you can, through my website, Teishin Khan, COIL, you can approach me. You can write me an email and approach me. So whether, via email or Facebook, it's okay with me. I would happy to have a contact with you.
Certainly. All right. Wonderful. We'd have the links in the interview description on YouTube. Itzik Sensei, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and we'll definitely have you again another time in the future.
Thank you very much. And don't forget that, being practical and being traditional are not
contradictory.
Of course you need to be this and that, but it's not contradictory. As there is, I would complete with a sentence in Uchi Naguchi, which is Okinawan language, and they say something like "makarat chabiti," which means, don't tell me who you are. Tell me where you come from. If I know where you come from, I know that's okay. So, and thank you very much, Jonathan, my friend, about this interview. And I hope it will interest some people, and hope to see you again. And if you want to contact me, so welcome.
I believe
Thank you
it
very much.
certainly, thank you, and I believe it would certainly be of a great deal of interest to a lot of people. See you around next time.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye for now.
Bye bye.
Well, that's it for today, folks. This was Itzik Cohen Sensei in his own words, and I gather that by now you realize why I like the man so much. We would definitely have him back on the podcast. There was a lot of stuff that I wanted to ask him about, but fortunately, he has this blessing of a young baby boy to take care of, along with his wise, beautiful, terrific wife Marina, and together they have this amazing martial arts family. They're great people. I can't wait to see them again in Israel. And as for you folks at home, you don't have to wait weeks or months until Itzik Sensei is back with us. There's a podcast here with several interviews already recorded, many more coming. Please, by all means, tap that subscribe button, right? So you'll be able to keep up to date with this channel that is updated on a daily basis, not solely with interviews, but also with lectures and wonderful videos and other types of content pertaining to traditional martial arts, especially Chinese martial arts, as well as traditional Chinese medicine. See you around next time.